research some new perspectives that were brought forward today with the final decision in a week. So I moved to postpone for a week.
Andrew, what would it take for you to vote on this tonight?
I don't think this is just about me and what it would take for me to vote on this tonight. I think we had some important perspectives come up from the community, and I think I'd like to see more about how other schools will benefit. I think there's a plan for that. It's just this has come up quickly, and there's still a little bit to be fleshed out about it. But I'm confident that other schools would have a chance to be involved in it.
The person that came forward from the community offered up research from 2002 and 3. Some of those things were quite old, pertaining to AIR. I mean, I can't give that a lot of credit, all these years later.
Again, you're right, this is getting confusing. So research and data either matters or it doesn't. So we can craft it how we want it to be, and we'll cherry pick what matters as far as reality. But does it matter or doesn't it? Because that's not a concern of mine personally. There's the obvious, what we do know that shows this fell flat matters to me. But it's an interesting conversation around what actually matters and what doesn't. What is our bar? What's our line in the sand of what we're willing to use as evidence to make decisions? I have a question for you, Andrew. What would you need to hear that would make you not vote for it? So what is it because I appreciate you wanting to take the time, but what is it that you're looking for that is it's the game changer, it's the deal breaker, it's just I can't sign on to this. If 3 out of 9 goals not being met with $400,000 of money invested, I'm not sure what you could hear that would, what is it that you need the exclamation point to say no? And I'm sincerely asking you that.
Okay, so when I'm looking at a bigger picture here, and whatever we do next year, if it's air, if it's not air, here's what I'm gonna do, because this I think didn't help our discussion tonight, whichever way it goes. You can't, if you're going to have whatever goal setting, you talk about the SMART goals, the attainable goals, okay? I didn't put a lot of stock in a goal about getting to an 85% response on our school operates as a team. And I never once thought, knowing that the number of agreement was 54%, had I thought that in a year that not getting to 85% from 54 on a survey was a make or break goal that was going to come down to this, I would have saved us the trouble and said, statistically, it's very unlikely that any intervention could move you from 54 to 85. By the same token, I think sure, I wish it was higher, but a good motion of staff on the staff survey, percentage-wise on the academic expectations are just right. They're not too low. That's related to error. You know, that's an improvement. I would not have said, okay, we have to get from 32 to 60. I would have saved you the trouble and said in 1 year, you're not going to hit that, okay? So, I think I've said, I would like to check a couple of things on the background of error that came from someone who is a respected professor at UW Green Bay. I think my concerns there probably will be a lead, but I think that question, do I give it a huge amount of overwhelming weight? Nope, but I think it was enough to justify 1 week. And a little more time to show how, because it's not just about saying that we're gonna bring the other schools will have an opportunity. I think it's showing. Here's where other schools are gonna physically get a chance, you know, whether, you know, maybe there's some job alikes that other schools might get to do. We could have we have good information, and I would imagine probably that people might have more opportunities to talk to staff over the next week, but it's not really about that. It's about these two things. And it's about a week, and I did make a motion to postpone for a week, so we should deal with that motion and then.
Yeah.
I have information that.
Okay, we'll just.
I do have information that could possibly affect your decision as to whether or not to move for another week. And that would be that I will not be here next week, and Dr. Wiegand will not be here next week. We are not in Green Bay. So if there's new information that would be shared, it would have to be shared by others. And so that may influence things. So I just wanted to put that out there. I apologize for cutting in, but I knew it might be something that would affect.
We should second the motion before. Is there a second to Andrew's motion? We can continue discussion.
I will second it, and that will be pending.
Okay, so then go ahead.
I think, Mr. Berger, I share the concern about what was brought forward by the professor. I said I found that confusing, much less troubling, because that would not be somebody or something that we should take lightly and dismiss if it's accurate. So that would be, is there a way, I mean, I think one of the pieces that I have concerns about, I don't know that besides creating greater clarity about what that expectation with air would be and what the additional staff, what else could be gained in a week's time. What I would offer, and I don't know how you take a vote with the caveat that if they are aligned with what was shared, that's problematic. You know, I don't know how you make that investment. That would be the only thing that I think, I don't know that we can know that answer today. That part I can't. What I can say is that I think there's opportunity to create and shape what the expectations are within that framework for our leaders. I know there's opportunity in my conversations and our conversations collectively with the AIR folks. You know, what I heard here, and I agree with you, Andrew, some of these goals the numbers were big and way ambitious for 1 year, and having turned around the school, I know that you take incremental baby steps forward. But more importantly, I go back to if the board chooses to make this investment, one of the critical pieces that I would offer that has to happen is that as we set these metrics of what their investment is looking like and what our public's investment is looking like is beyond just the framework of the opportunity that's laid out. It talks about all the additional coaching hours and the metrics, but again, as part of the co-interpretation, if I recall, some of this came out of that. Is that accurate? The metrics came out of that discussion? I'm not sure of that, but more importantly, that would be, if we're measuring other things other than these metrics, then they would have to be part of that investment over time. So, I put that out there. I think that that's the opportunity there, and again, I don't know that anyone wants to engage in a company that was described like we saw, and I'll be really honest, I was taken aback by that.
So other than the complication of Julie and John being gone, if this motion is just asking for some information, is there someone else that can provide that?
We could certainly provide it, but I think that the piece that I would go is that you wouldn't have everyone at the table. I think that, we can certainly lay some things out. I can certainly help with that, but I would offer that the advocacy piece and the team that is here tonight really represents the work and the ask. And I join them in that, obviously, but I think that that's an important part of this. I don't know what other discussion the board would want to have and make sure that we have the right people at the table to support the work, so.
This is Andrew's ask, so I'll ask Andrew.
I really think it's a chance for everyone to get a little more clarification. I think the administration's case for the positives of air has been laid out. I think the case, if you're, like I said, I'm not planning to do this, and whatever you do next, it's tricky because maybe you need a different word. Maybe you need to have certain, having 100% as a target serves a strong purpose, but it is a certainty of missing the target, and so is, statistically speaking, so is taking anything that's survey based from a 50 to an 85. So whatever happens next, I think it just seems to me that there were, a week here is a good idea. If not, then vote no on postponing. I don't think we'll need 3 hours again next week. I think there's just a couple, and I'm sure it's probably not the first time Air's been asked questions about the past, or so that's my request is the delay for a week.
Christina?
Sorry, Andrew, I don't want to wait. I mean, we're talking about a consultant company. A lot of these turnaround partner consultant companies aren't really that different, to be honest. I mean, I really wasn't surprised by some of the stuff that Andy had talked about, because I kind of shared some of that last year whenever I came and talked about the initial air proposal. So I appreciate that request so that you can gather more information, but I think we need to make the decision tonight. The other thing I'll say too around the conversation around the 9 objectives and the 3 out of the 9. Here's the thing: if we wanted to show that a high demand from the teachers, because I agree, people don't want to come and talk, and that goes whether they're happy or not happy, right? Whether they like it or not, nobody wants to come forward. But if you have those 3 out of 9 and you're saying, okay, how am I going to illustrate to the school board that these teachers absolutely want it? We would have done a robust teacher survey for Washington Middle School that would have said, we need this, we need this, we need this. And we don't have that. We don't have that. So whether teachers didn't want to come because they're afraid, or the administration and AIR didn't build that into the report, at the end of the day, the data doesn't support it, and the teachers haven't demonstrated to us that they want it because we never surveyed them in a robust way that communicates that. I think we need to take the vote tonight and move on.
I'm not sure if you're listening to the conversation around the process, right? The turnaround process. So we have established, and it was said again by the superintendent, that we've turned around schools. So the process that lays the groundwork for the turnaround, potential turnaround of a school, it was told to me that it was well thought out, the co-interpretation, setting metrics. Now we're saying that we're questioning that. So it's interesting how we're trying to hide from the fact that 3 out of 9 goals were met. We don't,
So let's take a vote on the first.
actually, you know what, that's the third time you've interrupted me.
No, but
Please
I'm-
let me finish. No, I need to finish
This
this.
isn't about the question that's on the table. This is about the next question that may or may not be on the table.
And that's fine, but what I'm just clarifying before we get into something else, and I would love to finish. And I think it's important because this probably won't be the last time we do this, we talk about this, but if we can't attach ourselves and be committed to the process that the district set in place for this turnaround, the metrics that were out there, now we're not sure if it was the right thing because it doesn't fit our narrative to continue forward. We have to be really careful about that.
Okay, I'm not changing what I'm doing, what I'm saying is that there is a different purpose of a 100% goal or an 85% goal, that I look at a goal like that as a long-term target and not as a make or break after 1 year. Because like I said, I think we all knew what the answer was about getting to 85% after 1 year. The answer is no. It's almost physically impossible to do. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me, that not reaching 85 on something in 1 year is the same thing as missing other types of targets that are, again, there are different purposes to these targets. The 100% target is a goal. It's the highest bar you can set that you can't reach. It's a reminder to keep striving. An 85% bar is a long-term target. There isn't anybody that is going to get you to 85% in 1 year, but you don't want to set low bars either. So, but I do think we do need to make a decision on the delay for a week, which I think is a good idea that can clarify a few more things. I think we need to make the decision on that.
Alright, so we'll take the roll call on that.
Can I just, to
About
address
this
that,
question?
about this
Okay.
question?
Alright,
I'm more inclined to take the vote tonight and defer to what Michelle is saying about vetting out and with the option to not sign it. Because I think we discussed it, and that's my only concern too, Andrew. That's the only
We could bring Andy in.
reservation I have.
Yeah, we could bring him in.
That's the only reservation I have, because I appreciate data. I don't see data as a black and white situation. I also appreciate input from teachers and administrators. And when the leader of the building tells me that it was beneficial to have them there, I'm gonna trust her and I'm gonna support her. But I don't think putting this off a week is gonna get us where we need to be. I think if we vote on it tonight and not sign if we find some reason not to, I would rather do that, so I will not support your week delay.
I need to know how that works legally. Passing something and then saying, but if we uncover something that concerns us, we're gonna not sign.
Just authorized us the ability to contract.
I need
she said the board has offered the district the opportunity to contract, but it doesn't make it binding. Is that right? Come forward. Chris, the voice coming out.
We still need to negotiate the contract. You're authorizing us the ability to enter into the contract to award the contract to AIR. But there's still some negotiations, and sometimes after boards give the district administration the authority to contract, you're not able to come to an agreement, and a contract is not entered into.
Okay, thanks. All right, go ahead, John.
We also put, we could, if there is a agreement that we're passing it based on whether or not that stipulation is met, we could also work with AIR and work amongst ourselves to put together a more formalized plan for what the turnaround practice training could look like. Not that it would be shared as a board presentation, but it could be something that could be shared with the board president and vice president if that was assured.
Are you talking about with, as far as, using it district-wide?
Correct.
Yes. Thank you.
So, every time we do something, I try to think of what is the headline? What's the takeaway? What is this gonna sound like, look like? So the board asked for metrics through a heavy-duty process that brought the community in. No, and it just let.
No, Robert's rules will tell you that we're addressing the motion that's on the table, and the motion right now is
Yep, and I'm gonna
to
get
put
there.
this off a week.
Yep, gonna get there.
You're not
And
there though.
I'm going to get there though. We're doing this, the board's deciding that we're gonna put the brakes on because we might have uncovered somebody that's involved in this group that didn't deliver what they said they would for the money they were paid. This is the headline, okay? The brakes are put on because of this. So the next time that the school district wants to go to a referendum, this is what people are going to remember. And I think it's important that, you know, we might have short memories to help ourselves throughout this, but the community does not, thankfully. So holding it to uncover something, even though what is put in front of you, the metrics that we asked for, that this process asked for, didn't deliver. So we're trying to find some other reasons to ignore that. Is a very slippery slope when it comes to asking the community for referendum money. Just want to lay that out there. That's my thoughts. Thank you for letting me speak. Right.
Sandy? Okay, we're voting on whether to delay the vote.
One, specifically one.
Yeah, Andrew's motion.
Becker?
Aye.
Maloney? No. McCoy?
No.
Shelton?
No.
No. Sitnikov? No. Van Newell?
No.
Warren?
No. So, was defeated, thank you. So, defeated 6-1. So now we have the original motion on the table that we are taking a vote on tonight. Sandy?
That doesn't mean that discussion was necessarily closed on the former, on the main motion, unless someone called the question.
Oh, do you have something else?
Well,
So-
so why, I mean, don't we have some idea as to how the other schools would be directly involved? And I guess that, it was my reason for the delay was more to give time to look at that than it was about, I take the other things seriously too, and now I'm gonna have to decide not knowing, but I mean, any large organization, there's gonna be some past concerns, although this is a pretty serious one.
Sure. So when we work with our principals on new content around new learning, we value just as we expect to value our students and what they bring to the table, we value what our principals bring to the table as well. And we look at it more as a professional learning community where we're taking knowledge that's in the room already, but also looking at where are the lead learners in the school, the principal, in their continuum of growth. So thinking about, we don't want to give a universal dosing to everybody that's exactly the same. but we would be giving a general summary and in great detail in a environment that would be supporting our principals in thinking about best adult learning practices. So it would be a model in which there was collaborative work together, and that there was a partnering, as you had mentioned before, Mr. Becker, where we would be allowing principals to work with one another, pair up and work in groups. This is actually something that is part of our process that we're learning and incorporating already, that would have been part of our retreat, the second half of the retreat, is really different principals are focusing on different areas of improvement. This would be an aspect where particularly our ESSA principals could be gathered together, as well as others who are interested during principal meeting time or other opportunity, and they would actually receive content training from the AIR coaches that are coming in, the people that have used these practices in schools and effectively turned around multiple schools themselves as principals and now as coaches. Thinking about that, there are ways that we work with our principals when we're working with new content. Again, it's not just a lecture, sit and get type approach. It has to do with partnering with our principals on a regular basis through coaching practices as well as group work together. And Dr. Wiegand can explain a little bit more about what that process looks like.
So part of my work as executive director for secondaries is to certainly work directly with each individual principal, but also as a collaborative learning team, and bringing the principals together, so the practices and so forth that Cindy has learned in Washington, and then the application of those at, whether it is also at Franklin, as well as Edison and Lombardi. We can all learn from those, and so those are monthly meetings that are held, and again, being able to differentiate what that looks like, because Lombardi is in a much different place when it comes to their systems and how they're responding to when it comes to curriculum assessments and instructional practices versus another school. So again, it'll have to be differentiated, but again, all can learn from the practices that are being brought forward.
Also, this work has been done by AIR with other districts. And so it will not be a problem for me to reach out to AIR and have them share as a template that we could work from. Of course, we want to differentiate it based on the needs of Green Bay, but we can look at what that planning and what that support has looked like in other districts that have contracted for similar work and share that so that people have access to that as part of their decision-making process.
Maybe it'd be a good time to just think back a little over a year ago when we were talking about hiring a turnaround partner. And can you just give us a brief history lesson about how AIR was vetted and how AIR was chosen? Sorry about that.
So I'm taking a tired trip down memory lane, trying to recall. But we went through a process of an RFP, request for proposals, and we had established criteria for which what was it that we wanted to see in a turnaround partner. And we laid that out for the request for proposals that was shared, and we looked for submissions based on what it was that we were looking for. There were a number of turnaround partners who came forward, not a vast number, because again, it's a market economy in which the demand is higher than the supply of turnaround partner entities. And so when we looked at our partners, there were 3 that we gave serious consideration to, and what we felt was most effective is, as I remember correctly, is that the model of application that AIR had was clearer to us, and that it really the process of the co-interpretation and how they were going to listen deeply to what the staff said and what they would learn through the use of data and the conversations with staff, that was something that we were very interested in. It was also the structure in which the way in which the services were being delivered, and that it focused on not only instructional change of instructional practice, but it also focused on cultivating the leader and making sure that new leader was effective as well. We had also done some work with AIR with the training related to the principal hiring practice and administrator hiring practice, which we changed significantly in the district. And that was a very productive, satisfying product and process that changed the way we hire administrators and was involved in our hiring of our Tank principal position today, as well as our Franklin position. So those are things that we looked at when we were making that choice.
And one of the things I've heard regularly from teachers, primarily, but some administrators, is how much superior the hiring process is now, the AIR process, and how effective it is, and how much they like it. Some of the teachers I've spoken to have been part of that process, so they're really happy about that. But I guess the bottom line is AIR was fully vetted.
Yes, it was fully vetted, and then we also, when we went over the proposals and when we had our initial proposal shared, we had additional questions for multiple entities that had brought forward their proposal, and we based our decision not only what was in the original proposal, but what was ascertained when we asked deeper questions that we had to make sure that we were aligning what we needed with what the service provider could agree to.
Okay, so we just established that the co-interpretation process was solid. That's what we're saying here. And we're saying that AIR listened deeply to staff, and then they determined metrics. So we're going to commit to the metrics, I assume, based on all of that conversation. I hope. It was also just discovered and communicated that Laura said that AIR was fully vetted, and you agreed. So if that is the case, then it's highly unlikely that would you have discovered something in the process? Did you go into the backgrounds of, I mean, I remember doing a Glassdoor search on AIR in general, and what I found there was problematic. That was another part of my decision, but so we just said that they were fully vetted. Now we have concerns, we're not sure if they were. So again, it's still a conflict. I would like to wonder what the principals of Sullivan, Howe, Tank, what would they do with an additional $200,000 for social emotional behavior challenges in their school? I would love to be in the room the day that you actually had that conversation with them, and I would wonder about the impact made to take that money and actually apply it into the schools that feed into the most challenging, I'm not going to say failure because I'm not going to say that, and I never have actually, by the way. I've never said that word, but the challenging schools that we have that feed into our middle schools, what would it be like to take $216,000 and apply that in ways that we could use that for social emotional behavior challenges in the classroom?
Sure, great questions. So thinking about the airing of air, we looked at whether or not they had met criteria for us based on the decision making that we had, based on what our need was. We also looked at the resumes of the people that had participated and that would be providing service to make sure that they had solid, reputable, multi-school change effectiveness. And we also looked at what were the schools within which they were working to see, did they deliver on results? And the answers to those questions were yes. I'm very curious too about the information from 1994 and 2003 about work in Thailand and other areas. I'd like to learn more about that. I heard recently on social media there was a car crash in the community, and somebody wondered if it was AIR related as well. There are different things that occur, and I'm not trying to make light. I did make light.
I had to think for a second.
So yes, I was making light. We've been at it for 3 hours.
John.
But I don't know what happened in Thailand during the Vietnam War related to AIR. That wasn't part of the screening process. If they have been part of serious transgressions, that would be something that morally would violate my code, the superintendent's code, our supervisor of schools code. Thinking about, would we work potentially ever with a Department of Defense school to share information or research? We might do that in some point, sometime, but you could also say that entity had a different relationship to clandestine activities and things of that nature too. Where do we draw the line? I would not want to work with an organization that had really serious, really deep concern about that type of work. So that would be something that would be of concern of mine. The board did address 3 major things that they wanted us to focus on with the last meeting, which was the price tag is too much for gradual release. We want to hear more about what you're doing for student behavior and culture and discipline, and what is your plan for applying this throughout the system. And so based on that, I really appreciated that governance piece, because it allowed us to reflect deeply, go back to deeper conversation and communication, and come forward with what I really believe is a better plan to address behavior, to reduce the amount of the contract, and to make sure that we're really deeply considering what that change process looks like. And when we talked about the data from the co-interpretation, they were agreed upon goals, and there was a degree between deeply attainable goal and aspirational goal. So that's what we're referring to as when we set a 100% goal, because we wouldn't want to say 99% of the students at Washington need to have a positive relationship with at least one adult, because that would say who are the 8 or 9 that aren't going to make it. So the aspirational goals are in there, and I think it's important to have a mix of aspirational and attainable goals. But I would also say that if we were in a plane that was crashing, and that trajectory of that plane was headed towards the ground at a pretty steep descent, and we wanted to change the trajectory of that plane, and the plane evened out and was beginning to climb a bit, even though we might not have achieved the 10,000 foot altitude that we had hoped for, I would still be considerably happy with that result and not wanting to revert back to our old strategy. So I would hope that there is more than a black and white with the data, and I think that the positive trajectory is really where the proof is in the pudding.
Let me just finish that thought I was having. So we continue to talk about the school perception surveys, and that seems to be where we're struggling with the goals here. But it is, I'm sure most of us can agree, that student discipline being handled, operating as a team, I believe that our schools can do that without spending an additional $200,000. That's the question on the floor, on the table. And we continue to, so I'll give you 2 more goals, okay? So now we're up to 5 out of 9. So we still are going to say that we're not going to take this money and put it into where the needs are the greatest, right? The heavy duty social emotional needs that we have in our schools. We have money, we know we do, it's on the table. We could make some serious impact with that money. But we're deciding tonight that we'd rather give it to an outside consulting company who did not deliver in their contract agreement with us. That, if I'm a journalist, that's what I'm writing. That's my headline. That's what I would put in there. And it's hard to defend that, because I cannot, again, stress how the needs in the schools of the students for early intervention coming into Franklin and Washington. If we're not willing to be honest about that, I've sat through expulsion hearings, and I'm just going to say this, and I've looked into the history, and I've consistently said this, and I will consistently repeat it. We have students who have significant needs in early childhood as well as in elementary school. we have money, we all know this. We have money we can put into these schools right now to address these needs. But we are going to make a decision to take that money and apply it to a company that didn't deliver what they were supposed to, that was a part of the community process. And I personally, at this point, the state of the district, where I have a daughter who's going to be an 8th grader, at this point, I don't care, honestly, if someone is having cocktails with Betsy DeVos and is crafting something that can make significant game-changing decisions for our school district. At this point, I think we have to think about facts and what we can do with our money. And again, if you believe that you think it's a good idea to give people money that didn't deliver, good luck the next time that you want to go to a referendum.
I do have one piece of information that's an answer to the second part of your question, which is what could we do with that money? What would the impact be on the schools? Thinking about that $216,000, it is a lot of money. In the economy of scale of the district, unfortunately, it's less than 1/10% of our district budget. Still though, it's a lot of money. So what would that look like if we dispersed the $216,000 amongst our multiple schools? It would be approximately $5,000. If we do, so we might look at the question again and say, what if we dispersed it just amongst our neediest schools? It would be approximately $18,000. And with $18,000, you could buy a 20th of one person's contract to work with and service kids based on the rough approximated value of a certificated person. That is valuable. It does have value. But if I'm looking at a 1/10 of 1% or less to invest in the whole district to be a changer of the way that we serve universally, I would put my money towards that investment as opposed to $5,000 per school.
So I spent some time, not that long ago, talking with a principal of a Title I school who was crying to me, saying that some of the aids that she had in place through a grant were disappearing. And she talked about the significant behavior changes that she experienced and what that looked like for her school and in her classrooms, and the playground as well. Incidents went down. She felt the kids were just having a better experience at school. So that was very valuable to her, and she was very concerned about that. So these are the things I think about when I think about, she's losing those extra supports. Sometimes it is just a matter of somebody on the playground. It's just somebody to build relationships and make connections and be present. An additional human being in front of the students. And I believed her. I believe that she meant every word of it. And I will stick to that. I mean, we can say we don't have enough money to make an impact, but if we're willing to take this and hang our hat on people that didn't do what they were supposed to do, I'm willing to gamble that money and send even one lunch aid, one playground aid, somebody that this building leader believed made a huge difference in the experience in their school. So we can dissect this all we want. The money didn't deliver, we have it, and we have needs. Those are the three things that we know.
Is everyone ready to vote?
Yes.
I have one more thing. How did we get to? I just can't get past the fact we got. And I recognize that different people may seek out different board members with an opinion. Did we? I mean, was anything reflected in survey comments? Nothing? No, not a separate survey, but we did do this school-wide survey that had pre-response comments.
We're not allowed.
They're not allowed to have comments unless they're, remember, we went through that whole thing? The board isn't allowed to have comments unless related to the board.
Yeah, no, that's actually not, that was not, well, first of all, I wasn't necessarily asking about reading specific comments. Second, that isn't how that works.
But I think you're exactly right that is a misstep, right? Because that would be able to bridge the gap between who's saying what and what staff actually is looking for. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely problematic.
So then you can agree, Andrew, that you're making an uninformed decision.
I'm not agreeing that I'm making it. Here's my one regret after this.